Hi, I'm Aubrey.
I'm Mary.
I'm Chris.
I'm Sean.
I'm Steph.
And I'm the other Steph.
And we are designers at Crema. And in our last video, we talked about our favorite Figma tips and tricks. And this week, we'll be talking about our favorite shortcuts. So let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, so some of my favorite shortcuts are related to selecting objects without using your mouse. So with Figma, we end up doing a lot of auto layout because it's so awesome. So if you don't use keyboard shortcuts, like I would find myself like quadruple clicking and sometimes even more to get to where I want. And like that can be really not exact and kind of frustrating just to get to the object you want. So one of my favorite ones that I use all the time is that if you just hold Command before you click, you can get straight to the lowest child. This can be super helpful for editing text or getting straight to a vector object. And then a lot of these that I have are related and can be used together, and that's really helpful. So after you select the lowest child, if you then want it to be one more level upwards, you can select the immediate parent of an object by hitting Shift and then Enter. This can be really helpful for getting like specifically to an auto layout. So now I have the auto layout selected that object was in. And then if you want to go a level further, if you hit Enter, then you are selecting all children of the layer that you're on. So I had that auto layout, and now I'm selecting all of the items within the auto layout. So I use those three in combination a lot, like especially if I was, adjusting something so that now I want to use full container for everything that's in an auto layout. Or go back to fixed width. That can be really helpful. So the other one that I had that took me actually a while to figure out was just that you can navigate to prototype mode really quickly by using Option 9, and then you can go back to design mode with Option 8, and that way when you want to link something really quickly, you don't have to use your mouse because it's all the way in the corner. So.
Very nice. I'm so guilty of quadruple clicking. Oh my God. Sorry to everyone around me.
I have to confess, I saw this the other day. I saw your shortcut of the Shift Enter. I had never known that, and that blew my mind. And I immediately started using it as soon as I discovered that. So even though I cheated and saw this beforehand, I'm so thankful I did because I've been using it in the past few days. So that was cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same spot as Sean. I saw it and I thought, oh shoot, that's really good. So I've been using it and it's been really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I miss prototyping in Sketch. You could hit like C or something. There was a keyboard shortcut for it. And honestly, I find myself kind of still doing that. And I wish there was a quicker way to get to it, just to toggle between them. So Option 8, Option 9 is nice, but it still feels like it's an additional button. You have to use two hands to get it. Like, I don't know. I really miss that about Sketch, the fact that you could just toggle back and forth. And I'm kind of surprised it's a sort of more hidden key command.
I know.
The dragging too.
Yeah.
I liked the clicking to link in Sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like, even though I'm hitting Option 9 here, I still have to like move my mouse over to here to like initiate the actual linking. Whereas in Sketch, the shortcut, like once you selected a layer, you are automatically like starting the linking process.
Well, and you can also go between showing the layers panel, the components panel, and the team library by hitting Alt 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Okay, wait your turn.
Well, oh no, I was not on mine. But I think it's annoying. I wish they were like showing the different panels. I wish were all the same initial command keys. I wish they were all either Alt or Option. Wait, they are the same. That is the same thing, isn't it? In the thing, I haven't said okay. If we can just like cut that out. We're just gonna chop. So one of the other really great things you can do with the Option key is if you hit Option 1, 2, and 3, it will allow you to view the same panels.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Or the components, assets, and team library panels specifically with 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So if you're here on layers and you want to get to assets.
All right, so I'm going to walk through a couple of my favorite shortcuts. So I'm going to try and do it pretty quickly because I have a few of them. With setting an opacity, I think most people know that you can hit, if you hit 1, it goes to 10%, 2 goes to 20, 3 goes to 30. It always bothered me that there was no way to go to 0. But I realized the other day that if you double click any numbers, you do 2 sets of numbers. So if you wanted to be 55%, if you just type it quickly, it would change to 55%. If you wanted it to set it to 0 and you hit double 0, it would reset all of it to 0. So, or set the opacity to 0. So having the ability to not just do single click opacity, but actually get more specific is really nice and useful, and a great one that I wish I would have known sooner. Another is actually ordering. So this ties in a lot to what Steph was talking about with the ability to hit enter to select into items and shift enter to select out. And then once you get to an individual item, right, using tab, you can use tab to select through and shift tab to select up. With that, there is actually also the ability to move them in order. So I use this a lot with auto layout. Like if I have a card component, I'm trying to decide what order different pieces of content should be, and I'm rearranging things, I use this a lot. So if you wanted to move an item, so we'll select this orange one so you can see it. If you wanted to move an item down 1, you would hit Command, and then you would hit the left bracket, and that would move it down 1. If you hit Command and the right bracket, it would move it up 1. And if you hit Command Option and the right bracket, it would move it all the way to the top. And if you hit Command Option and then the left bracket, it would move it all the way to the bottom. So I use this a lot in deciding how to arrange different components and get them in the order that I want them. It's extremely useful with when you're using auto layout. And it's a great way to just get things quickly arranged without having to do a lot of work with your mouse. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was the alignment, using different things for alignment and distribution. So first, I'm going to show how to distribute items. So to distribute items vertically, you would hit Option and then Control, and if you hit H, so Option Control H distributes things horizontally, and Option Control V distributes them vertically. So I'm just taking the outermost 2 height-wise and width-wise, and basically distributing all the items in the middle within that. So I use that a lot prior to adding auto layout to components to get things arranged consistently and spaced appropriately. As far as actual alignment goes, when you have multiple items selected or just a single item, if you have a single item, it would do the alignment to whatever frame or space it's in. So if I wanted to align all of these to the left, you would hit Option A, and that would align everything to the left. If you wanted to, and it aligns, when you have multiple selected, it aligns them to if you say align to the left, it would align them all to the leftmost item. If you had Option D, it would align everything to the rightmost item. Option W would align everything to the top, and Option S would align everything to the bottom. However, if you only had one item selected and you did Option A, it would just take that one and align it to the frame space that it's in. So you could move it around this way. And then if you wanted to align it horizontally and vertically, you would hit Option H or Option V, and that would align it that way. So Option A left, Option H horizontally, same thing. So it's great to use for getting components aligned. Again, I use this a lot prior to auto layout, but it's just nice and handy and a good way to get everything set up appropriately.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never used those with a single object selected. I didn't know that it would do that.
Yeah, it's I use it a lot when I'm just trying to, kind of get that initial setup. And then usually once I get things how I want them, then I'll go back and retroactively add auto layout a lot of the time, just to make sure that I'm not designing. Like sometimes I feel like I get trapped in designing by auto layout where I will like not think outside the box of auto layout. So I try to get things set up first and then go back and add it. And so that's just a helpful way for me to still make sure I'm keeping things consistent and clean without having to kind of worry about every pixel and did I get things aligned properly. I just know that it is. So it's definitely really helpful.
Nice.
I love the reordering one. I use that all the time. But the alignment one, I would love to get better at that because it's kind of a drag to reach all the way up to the top right, drop down a little panel, I don't know, and do all that alignment stuff.
One of the things I'll show is one of my favorite plugins, which isn't really a plugin. Like just learning all of the commands you can learn for Figma, I feel like keeps you like cuts your time in half for like most tasks and allows you to design a lot quicker. And the alignment and ordering ones were definitely ones that like cut down a ton of time of having to like actually like grab my mouse and click around and do things manually. So it definitely is a time saver when you figure out helpful ways to use it.
So this alignment stuff, were you doing this before you took your little class, your practice thing?
Yeah, so this is something that I learned from another one with Sketch, and it works the same way in Figma.
Cool.
And so a lot of the shortcuts for Sketch pull over to Figma. There are some that are different. But I did a shortcuts class a couple of years ago for Sketch, so a lot of these come over from that.
Cool. Okay, today I'm going to show 3 shortcuts that are super simple, but I find that I use every day. So they're really critical to my workflow, but they might be some of the most basic commands you could probably do in Figma. And that is renaming, applying an auto layout, and turning something into a component. So the first of which is renaming. You can do it a few ways where you can click an object, go to your layers panel, and call it something, and save that there. But I find that I do use this all the time, which is Command R. And what that does is that opens up that naming place in the layers panel there for you to just immediately start typing into. So that's one way, Command R. But batch actions for renaming is really powerful too, where you highlight by just dragging a shape over everything, hitting Command R, you actually get prompted with this little dialog here to make that name change, and it does some cool options. So we want to call it, new layer something, and then you can apply like numbers like ascending or descending, some other cool stuff. So you rename that there, and that's reflected in the layers panel. So that is a really cool and useful feature for batch renaming. Auto layout I use a lot too. So that's pretty simple. You can highlight a bunch of objects and just hit Shift A. So Shift A is what applies auto layout, and what's cool is that it interpreted that I want it to be a horizontal auto layout, which is correct. So if I Command Z that and undo that, if I drag these and I place them kind of like vertically, if I hit Shift A, it'll align them, and then it will assume a vertical auto layout. So that's a pretty cool feature that it interprets kind of what you want to do, but I find that I use that a lot to apply really quickly. You can readjust the spacing pretty easily, and then do some other alignment things with that. So that's auto layout. And then turning things into a component. So components are really critical for Figma, and right now I just have this auto layout element here, and it's just a super simple command of Command Option K, and that's it. It just turns into a component. You can tell because it's purple here. The purple icon appears here, so I can undo that. You can do that right here. So they make that one of the more easily accessible things to do in the toolbar. But I find that more often than coming up here, I actually make the component down here with the keyboard shortcut. Now, I don't think there's a way, so you can do things with multiple elements and turn them into multiple components. Yeah, but there's no keyboard shortcut for that. So for that type of thing, you'll have to come to the menu or this element up here in the toolbar and select that. So there you go. Those are my shortcuts.
Very nice. I use rename, the batch rename so much. I think that's probably the one I use the most because I obsessively name my artboards. And so I'll use that with the ascending and descending a lot because I'll get like I name things like a feature as a number, and then a flow as a number, and then individual screen gets a number. So I'll select a whole flow and I'll give them like an initial name, and then I'll go through or an initial name of like what each individual one is differing, and then I'll go through and use battery name to say like flow, and then / current name / number, and then the ascending. So you can create like an easy way to do number systems. And it's so helpful. It saves so much time, because otherwise it would just take so long to do that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there are plugins that can get like way more robust about finding and replacing and renaming things like that. But I find that just this built-in command is super effective and quick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the plugins. I've never found one that like just gets it right. It feels like it's like additional work almost to use those sorts of plugins. And so I think just like if you just keep it also is like an incentive to keep your systems organized, right? Because if everything's in the right order, you can more easily reorder things and name things, and you don't have to worry about it being done improperly.
Yeah.
All right, so the shortcuts that I've got are Shift 1 and Shift 2. And so those are gonna help you zoom to all your layers and specific layers. So specifically Shift 1 allows you to zoom to all artboards. And so sometimes if you get a little lost in a file and you're unable to find where all your artboards are and you're just kind of zooming around the screen, if you hit just Shift 1, it takes you back to all of your artboards. Specifically with Shift 2 then, if you're looking for something specific, so I don't know who this is, but I'm gonna select someone here, and it's really far away, I have no idea, but if I hit Shift 2, it's gonna take me straight to Sean. But also, if I'm zoomed out as well, and I look at the layers panel, and I'm clicked on, let's say this avatar, we'll see who that is, and I hit Shift 2, it'll take me to me.
Those are incredible. I only learned about those recently, and I use them a lot.
Yeah, I've been using
that feeling where you're like completely lost in a file and you cannot find an artboard anywhere. It's just the craziest feeling.
You're like hyper zoomed in on just like pure gray for miles. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
like you have no sense of like depth at that point.
Have you ever reached the end of one of these like canvases, by the way? I kind of didn't know. I know there's like physically an ending to it, but I've reached the end of it and I feel so weird that I'm butting up against this invisible barrier.
It's horrible.
That happened to me when we were making designs for the website, and I had my sizing like way huge.
It was
Mary was like, "This is nuts."
It was like 20,000 pixels for the width of the artboard.
Sizing things.
There's just no sense of scale. You have no idea.
I just remember Mary being like, "Oh my gosh, we reached the edge. This never happened."
Yeah, I've definitely built out to the edge before, and it was really disappointing because I was trying to pull out a new artboard, and it was bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Shift 2 is so helpful if you have like like an outlier style that's not there, like a weird color variable that got messed up or something, and you hit select on the panel that like lets you select it. It doesn't actually zoom into it. So
yeah, it's been really nice.
Sense without a visual, but I feel like it works really well for finding things you need to clean up.
All right, I've got a few of my favorite shortcuts to share with you all. The first that I'm going to share is so simple, so basic. It's just the command and then / to open up the quick menu in Figma. I use this all the time when I'm looking for a plugin. Maybe I'm looking for some sort of plugin or something, and it just instantly opens up things. I don't have to go search through the menu. So very, very simple, but it's a helpful one that we kind of forget about easily because it's so simple. The other one has been shared to me by Sean, actually. I'm going to move these. This is really helpful. Sometimes we're trying to drag things into an auto layout frame, and we don't want to place it within an auto layout frame. Like this is the example. So maybe we're trying to add a badge to a card or on top of a card. But anytime you try to bring something into an auto layout frame, it just jumps into auto layout, which is normally cool, but there are definitely the odd circumstance where we don't want that. If you hold the spacebar while you are dragging your item, it just pulls it on top. And then you can continue to move it around. And if you're holding the space bar, it won't fall within the auto layout frame. So that's a very helpful tip. I've started using that a lot because I rely on auto layout so much. Sometimes my entire artboard is an auto layout artboard. And so it's really helpful to be able to drop things in on top of all of that.
Yeah, quick menu is so awesome. I do forget about it. I always forget about it. It's specifically with plugins and go to my super long menu to sort through all my plugins. So that's awesome. Good reminder.
I have way too many plugins and it's overwhelming to try to find anything in this.
Yeah. Yep. Holding shift while with an element over an auto layout has been really helpful. I remember when Sean shared that, and it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I've run into that a lot, not knowing how to kind of get around it. And when Sean shared that, I was like, yes, that's perfect.
And I think there's got to be another way to dive into, right? Like when dragging an element, can't you hold another key and like dive into lower level frames or something like that to drop it wherever you like? Maybe
I think you shared that one.
Yeah. I feel like that'd be really valuable with the holding the space bar and then some other combo about how you drop it into a lower level frame. I don't really remember what that is, but I'm sure that exists.
I want to say it's like if you hold command or something to get something into a frame, but I could be wrong. But otherwise, if you don't do the space bar, you're like you're using your arrow keys forever to like nudge something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I did before I knew this shortcut.
Me too.
It's rough. So true.
Okay, I have one to share. As I mentioned in our previous video, I use Figma in a lot of ways to replace the Adobe suite. And so one thing I often used in designing blog headers was the eyedropper tool to copy and paste all the attributes from one element to another. So a way to do that in Figma is with Command Option C and Command Option V. So here I have a square with a stroke and a color that I want to apply to these other shapes. So Command Option C will copy it, and then Command Option V will paste. So you could also select them both and apply. Very simple, but for repeating styles, this has been really helpful in illustrating. But I would love to open it up to you guys to know best ways to practice. I've been writing sticky notes of some of the ones I like want to put on my screen to remember, but as someone who doesn't use a ton of shortcuts day to day, what's the best way to remember them?
It sounds like whatever Aubrey's going to suggest will be awesome for that. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. If you watch our plugins video, we'll show you a cool thing that you can buy and use. And it's been super helpful. It's something that I do. Like I'll do one of the different practices like a couple days a week. And so just like even those ones I don't think to use, like it just kind of retains knowing them. And then occasionally I'll go and like actually make sure I'm putting them to use in files. Just so even the ones you don't frequently use, when you do need them, you remember them. But that's definitely been the best way for me to kind of keep on top of them. Because otherwise you kind of get stuck in your favorites and you forget about everything else.
Sure.
And one thing I've realized, I'm trying to think like, how do I discover these things? Sometimes it's just like watching YouTube videos. You're like, I did not know you could do that. Other times I would be like aware of every time you're in a context menu, like a right click menu or a drop down from the top, just see if there's an associated key command next to it. Because oftentimes they're just like documented next to it. And so if you find yourself always going into the same menus, just like keep an eye out for things that can make that little trip much shorter by doing the key command. And that's how I've discovered probably like half of the ones I use. And those are just like everyday ones. And like, even like sitting here talking about it, like if I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what key combo is this? But if I'm just like instinctually doing it, like in the day to day, it just comes much more natural. So it's hard to talk about these things unless I remind myself physically how you press them.
Sure. And one thing I will say. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say the other thing that I use a lot for remembering key commands is the little like right corner question mark in Figma. If you click on that and then hit keyboard shortcuts, it pulls up a menu and each shortcut highlights when you've used it. So it's a helpful thing to go through and see the shortcuts that you don't use very often and then test them out, and then they'll turn blue when you kind of like master it or use it. So that's another one to like remind myself when there's things that I don't really use very often.
Awesome.
I love
Yeah,
how
and I found when we sit down and work at a desk together, I always pick up on ones too. Just like seeing them in action, you're like, whoa, how did you do that so fast? So
Yeah, I'd second that.
for
Just
sharing.
being around everybody seems to, through osmosis, provide keyboard shortcuts.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what inspired this video.
Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. I find myself using this shortcut that you showed, Steph, all the time when I'm trying to update a file that was designed before Figma had auto layout. So when I'm like deleting frames that were added purely to have a background effect, I'll use this and then apply that to the auto layout and then delete the frame, and it makes it so much faster.
Thanks for watching this video. We hope you've learned a couple shortcuts that can help speed up your workflow. If you have any others to share with us, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And be sure to like and subscribe for our next video.